Hello, everyone. Okay, so today our class. Of course, it's part two of Marvel history. And so we've gone over kind of the first part, how Marvel got started, the idea behind it. Obviously the comics were really big during World War II. Then there was kind of a lull. And then, they started doing different kind of comics where it came to like aliens, things like that. A lot more sci-fi. And then they moved back into superhero comics. And so we went over that, that it went from Atlas Comics and now, it became Marvel. So now enter Stan Lee, who, of course, is a huge part of Marvel history. I mean, without Stan Lee, comics wouldn't be what they are today at all. So, like I said, part two, enter Stan Lee. So Lee became one of the best known names in comics with his charming personality and relentless salesmanship of the company. His voice permeates the stories, the letters and news pages, and even the hyperbolic house ads of many of the Marvel comics of the first half of the 1960s. His sense of humor and generally lighthearted manner, and the exaggerated depiction of the bullpen. Lee's name for the staff, the bullpen. Bunch of bulls in there making comics. As one big happy family. So the artist who eventually co-plotted the stories based on Lee's rough synopsis or even the spoken concept in what became known as the Marvel Method, contributed greatly to Marvel's product and success. So Kirby, who was the artist that really did a lot of the drawings for the writing that Stan Lee came up with. So Kirby in particular is generally credited for many of the cosmic ideas and characters of Fantastic Four and the Mighty Thor, such as the Watcher, the Silver Surfer, and Ego, the Living Planet. While Steve Ditko is recognized as the driving artistic force behind the moody atmosphere and street-level naturalism of Spider-Man and the surreal atmosphere of Doctor Strange. Stan Lee, however, continues to receive credit for his well-honed skills at dialogue and story sense, for his keen hand at choosing and motivating artists and assembling creative teams, for his uncanny ability to connect with the readers. So, and that's what Stan Lee did. That's what he's famous for. He, like I said, he's from the last class. He's in a lot of the movies because he really pushed the product, the Marvel product, and came up with the Marvel Method, basically. I mean, along with the bullpen. So in 1968, company founder Martin Goodman sold Marvel Comics and his other publishing businesses to the Perfect Film and Chemical Corporation. Interesting. It grouped these businesses in a subsidiary called Magazine Management Corporation, Goodman, and Goodman remained as publisher. So now we move on from the 1960s to the 1970s. So in 1970, Stan Lee saw the opportunity to market a British audience without using reprinted American material. So in October of 1970, so late 1970, Marvel created a British hero for British people, Captain Britain. First released exclusively in Britain and later in America. So Howard the Duck, number 8. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Howard the Duck, but yeah, I haven't seen that in a long time. But so Howard the Duck, number 8, January of 1977. year and month I was born. Art by Gene Colan and Steve Leoban. 1971. Marvel Comics co-editor, comics editor-in-chief Stan Lee was approached by the United States Department of Health, Education, and Welfare to do a comic story about drug abuse. Lee agreed and wrote a 3-part Spider-Man story portraying drug use as dangerous and unglamorous. However, the industry's self-censorship board, the Comics Code Authority, refused to approve the story because of the presence of narcotics, deeming the context of the story irrelevant. Lee, with Goldman's approval, published the story regardless in The Amazing Spider-Man number 96 through 98 in May to July of 1971, without the CCA approval. The storyline was well received, and the CCA's argument for denying its approval was criticized as counterproductive, and the code was subsequently revised the same year. So that's amazing. So not only are comics, relatable in their own way, but, they actually push to do good things in the world. Like, fighting drug use and trying to keep people, safe, and writing comics about it, and then actually balking at people saying, no, you can't do this, and saying, well, guess what, we're gonna anyway, because we really believe in this product. So Goodman retired as publisher in 1972 and was succeeded by Stan Lee. So Stan Lee then became the publisher of Marvel, who stepped aside from running day-to-day operations at Marvel. A new series of co-editors-in-chief oversaw the company during another slow time for the industry. And once again, Marvel attempted to diversify. And with the updating of Comics Code, achieved moderate success with the titles themed to horror. So there's Tomb of Dracula, martial arts, Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, Sword and Sorcery, Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja. Those were also made into movies starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, as well as Sylvester Stallone's ex-wife. I can't remember her name right now. But she was in that. Well, she played Red Sonja. Satire, Howard the Duck, and science fiction. So there's Kill Raising in Amazing Adventures. Some of these were published in larger sized black and white magazines, targeted for mature readers. Marvel was able to capitalize on its successful superhero comics of the previous decade by acquiring a new newsstand distributor and greatly expanding its comic line. Even more importantly, during a time when the price for and format of the standard newsstand comic were in flux, Marvel captured a significant piece of DC's market share by offering lower priced product with a higher distributor count, which is actually pretty smart if you think about it. So you reach more people, and you can because you can charge less for your product. So in 1973, Perfect Film and Chemical Corporation changed its name to Cadence Industries, which in turn renamed magazine management company as Marvel Comics Group. So they went back to Marvel. A bunch of name changes for this. Goodman, now completely disconnected from Marvel, created a new company called Atlas Seaboard Comics in 1974, reviving Marvel's old Atlas name. But this product lasted only a year and a half. Wow. Howard the Duck looks a lot like Donald Duck. I don't know if you can get a chance, Google Howard the Duck. It's not what he looked like in the movie, anyway. So in the mid-1970s, Marvel was affected by a decline of the newsstand distribution network. Cult hits such as Howard the Duck were the victims of the distribution problems. with some titles reporting low sales when in fact they were being sold at a later date in the first specialty comic book stores. An attempt by Marvel to buy DC was frustrated by DC's refusal to sell its entire library of characters, wanting to retain control of Superman and Batman so that they would stay part of just DC. And DC was later folded into Warner Communications by owner Kinney National Company. And by the end of the decade, Marvel's fortunes were reviving thanks to the rise of direct market distribution, selling through those same comic specialty stores instead of newsstands. And the sales increase, previously borderline books such as the canceled 60s titles The Uncanny X-Men, revived to become a hit series under the team of writer Chris Claremont and artist John Byrne of the more naturalistic urban crime superhero comics, Daredevil, which was Frank Miller actually did that, which he's also done a lot of other things. Okay, now we move into the 1980s. So in the 80s, Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars #1. So although with a bunch of people, but although a controversial personality, Shooter cured many of the procedural ills of Marvel, including repeatedly missed deadlines and oversaw a creative renaissance at the company. The renaissance included institutionalizing creator royalties, starting the Epic imprint for creator-owned material in 1982, and launching a brand new, albeit ultimately unsuccessful, line named New Universe. To commemorate Marvel's 25th anniversary in 1986, however, Shooter was responsible for the introduction of a company-wide crossover, so Contest of Champions, Secret Wars, and was accused by many creators, especially near the end of his tenure, of exercising his job in a draconian manner and interfering with the writer's creative process. So in 81, they purchased the De Petit Phalang Enterprises animation studio from the famed Looney Tunes director Friz Freleng and his business partner David H. De Petit. The company was renamed Marvel Productions and produced well-known animated TV series of movies featuring such characters as G.I. Joe, the Transformers, Jim Henson's Muppet Babies, and such TV series as Dungeons and Dragons, as well as cartoons based on Marvel characters including Spider-Man and his amazing friends. So definitely that's, when I grew up in the 80s, that is something I grew up watching, was Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Do whatever a spider can. Spin a web. Here comes Spider-Man. Sorry, I don't remember all the words, obviously. It's been a long time. In 1986, Marvel was sold to New World Entertainment, and within 3 years, sold it to McAndrews and Forbes, owned by Revlon executive Ronald Perelman. Perelman took the company public on the New York Stock Exchange and oversaw a great increase in the number of titles Marvel published. As part of the process, Marvel Productions sold its back catalog to Saban Entertainment, acquired in 2001 by Disney, and Marvel Management closed the animation studio opting to outsource. So Peter Parker, Spider-Man #1, is one of the many spin-offs of the American Spider-Man. Of the Amazing Spider-Man. which launched the highly successful 2099 line of comics set in the future, Spider-Man 2099, etc. And the collective and the creatively daring though commercially unsuccessful Razor line imprint of superhero comics created by novelist and filmmaker Clive Barker, very famous. Yet by the middle of the decade, the industry had slumped and Marvel filed for bankruptcy. That's not good. Amidst investigations of Perlman's financial activities regarding the company. Yikes. So in 1990, Marvel began selling Marvel Universe cards and trading card maker Impel. These were collectible trading cards that featured the characters and events of the Marvel Universe, which would spawn 7 more series of cards and imitations by DC. So in the 2000s, with the new millennium, Marvel Comics escaped from bankruptcy and again began diversifying its offerings. In 2001, Marvel withdrew from the Comics Code Authority and established its own Marvel rating system for comics. It also created new imprints such as Max, a line intended for mature readers, and Marvel Age developed for younger audiences, including children. So not, it's kind of a young adult sort of thing usually, and adults, but they started marketing towards kids and things like that. Marvel remains a key publisher in the comics business, even as the industry has dwindled to a fraction of its peak size decades earlier. Stan Lee is no longer officially connected to the company, save for the title of Chairman Emeritus, but remains a visible face in the industry and occasionally remarks on his fondness for the characters. In 2002, he sued successfully for a share of income related to movies and merchandising of Marvel characters based on a contract between Lee and Marvel to the late 1990s. According to court documents, Marvel has used Hollywood accounting to claim for those projects. So Stan Lee was like, hey, you owe me some money here. Like, you guys are making tons of money off these movies. Regardless, Marvel has also become a key player in Hollywood, with many of its characters being turned into successful film franchises, the highest grossing being those of the X-Men starting in 2000 and Spider-Man beginning in 2002. So those are definitely the big ones. But there's, of course, the Hulk. Doctor Strange is still pretty big, Iron Man, and many others. So that is the story of Marvel. How they went from a very small place to bringing in Stan Lee, of course, and really kind of getting their footing. And then, of course, they kind of moved from just being a comic book to having things be created in cartoons. And there's a lot of cartoons with it. Like G.I. Joe was huge. Transformers was huge when I was a kid. I mean, they had giant toy lines of all of these. And then there were the X-Men were there. I remember having toys of, I remember Wolverine was all yellow, and but he was big. There were so many things, and of course Spider-Man. And there's also other TV spin, like the Hulk had like Lou Ferrigno, famously played the Hulk, and then spun into movies slowly, and then eventually just, once the 2000s hit, it just exploded. So it's an interesting history, wonderful things to know. How it started, how Stan Lee came on, then basically left and then sued the company for basically royalties, but did say how fond he is of actually having been a part of something that is such a cultural phenomenon. But yeah, so that's the history of Marvel, or Marvel history. And so please let me know of any other classes you might want to do. and we will most certainly do them. Okay, well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see y'all later on.